Hi, and welcome to my Azure Quick Hits video series. I'm Mark Godfrey, and I'm a Fast Track engineer with Microsoft. In this video, we're going to show you how to install Azure VMware Solution. So the first thing we're going to do is actually check that we've got the resource provider enabled. Okay, there is an assumption that you have an EA agreement in place already. That is a requirement. So once you've got the subscription loaded, you're going to scroll down to Resource Providers. And then when this pops up, we're going to type in AVS, and we're going to see that it's registered. If it's not, we're going to click on it and register it. Right click and then register up here. All right, so that's good. So now let's go to AVS, Azure VMware Solutions. You can see I've already got one installed here. So in this case, good Lord. In this case, we're going to click on Create. And once this loads, we're going to get the page with the key information that we need. So click on Next Basics. Again, it's going to point to the subscription. We're going to create a new resource group, which in our case, we're going to call AVS in West EU. Okay. And then for the resource name, we'll just call that AVS 2.0 FTA-WEU. You will very often see this message. And what this message is telling us is that we haven't got allocation of, through the support channel, 4 nodes in the default location. So if I change this location to where I know I've got some nodes, which is going to be West Europe, here we go, you're going to see that notice disappear in a second. The size of the host, we've only got one host size in that particular location. And we're going to choose 3 nodes. And here we're going to add the VNet address space that we require for the AVS private cloud with a /22 at the end. There's good information in the install documents as to why we need this /22. So just be aware you do, and make sure it doesn't conflict with any other IP address ranges you've got in your network. All right, we're about to get the really complicated part. If you want to add tags, you can. If not, you can do a review and create. It's going to give you a quick overview of what you're doing. So the subscription, the resource group name we're going to create, the location, the resource name, that's the name of our AVS private cloud, and of course the IP address, the number of hosts. Once you've done that, click on Create, and the deployment's going to start. Now this deployment takes anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, so we'll rejoin when this is finished. We can see here the deployment completed successfully, right? AVS FTA EU. If we open that up, we're going to see the overview page. And at this point, you basically got this isolated cloud. It's not actually connected to anything yet. So the first thing we're going to actually do is look at connectivity. We're going to create a net new network. And this is an Azure VNet. And this is where we're going to put a jump box that will allow us to connect into the private cloud. So it's come up with a good name for us. That seems perfectly good to me. And the address space, again, this must not conflict with any other address space in your network. So I'm actually going to change this to the next available address space, which is going to be 10.40.20.0/24. And then I'm going to create a subnet for it. And this subnet will be called the jump box subnet. And in this address range, I'm going to make it quite small because I just need effectively one IP, right? So we'll just make it a very small network. Let's go with 10.40.20.0/27. So that's actually plenty of addresses. We can even make that a 28 in this case. All right, click OK. Now, it gives us an error message saying that the virtual networks must have a subnet with the name Gateway Subnet. And the reason they're doing that is because the only way to connect into AVS is through an express route connection. So that's what it's going to generate. So let's create a new, go back to here. And this time we're going to add Gateway Subnet. And it's got to be spelled exactly the same way as shown here just behind your gateway subnet, all one word. And we'll change that one. We'll make this to 10.40.20.128/ and in this case it's going to be 25. That's probably a little big. There are some reasons for making a big gateway subnet, and this use case there really isn't one, but as a default I always try and put more address spaces than I think I'm going to need for gateway subnets. I think you can make it as small as, there is a restriction on it, as small as a 27 or 26, but I tend to fall inside of caution. Click OK, and now we're going to see that error message disappears. So this is pretty simple. All we've got to do now is click on Save, and that's going to start the deployment. And what that deployment is going to do, it's going to build the VNet, and it's going to build the gateway subnet, and it's going to connect that gateway subnet to the ExpressRoute gateway that is built by default when you install AVS. This is going to take somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes to complete because the gateways are just slow to build. So we'll be right back. So I went ahead and built a jump box, which we called a AVS EU jump box here. And that's the jump box that exists on the VNet that we provisioned connected through that ExpressRoute gateway. Let's take a quick look at what that looks like from a diagram perspective. So if we look at this diagram, it's a representation of what we built so far. We have our AVS environment here. We have the ExpressRoute gateway that's built when we do that VNet connection piece. Here's the gateway, here's the VNet, and here's our jump box subnet. So next we're going to RDP into the jump box and then use the URLs shown in the identity in the portal to connect to vCenter and NSX. So let's sign in or RDP into that box, and then we'll start the browser. If we flick back over to the portal, go to the AVS Cloud, click on Identity, and select the web client URL. Copy that, paste it into the browser, press Enter. We haven't set any certificates up yet, so we're just going to go through the accept, go to the default site, launch the vSphere client, and it brings us to the vSphere logon screen. So at this point, if we flick back over to the browser, the portal we can now copy the admin username, paste that in, and that is the same for every private cloud. It's always cloud admin at vSphere.local. Go back to the browser, or to the portal, and click on the admin password, copy to clipboard. Now, when we put this in, Control V, we can log in. All right, so here's our software-defined data center. And if we look at the cluster, we can see the 3 default nodes that are created. And I can see one of my colleagues has actually already installed a test virtual machine. All right, let's move on to the last thing we're going to do, which is to add a node to the cluster. So I'm going to choose my EU cluster here. And then in the overview screen, we're going to see over here on the right-hand side, there's the number of nodes. 3, which is the default size for an AVS cluster when you first instantiate it. So click on 3. That'll bring up the name of the actual cluster. And then we'll take the ellipses on the far right-hand side, click on Edit. And then we're going to click on Add a Host. Now there are a couple of notes. One, it does take some time to actually deploy this new host to the existing cluster. So that deployment is actually quite quick. As you can see, it finished at 12:28 and we started at around 12:26, so just a few minutes. If we go to Resource, it's going to take us back to the AVS, and at this point we're going to now see the overview page is updated to include 4 nodes. There we go. All right, it's that simple. Now you can do some cool things with storage policies, and that will likely be our next video. Hope you found this useful, and stay tuned for the next video in the series.